Hi everyone, and welcome to our live Q&A. Today we've got a technology panel. We've got some fantastic people on the panel. Just to remind you, this is being live streamed in our Facebook group, the Coronavirus Yorkshire Business Support Group. It's also on YouTube and on LinkedIn today as well. So feel free to comment. If you've got questions, please do ask. We're aiming this at IT managers or sort of small businesses and maybe the person that's in charge of the IT. Jason Newell, we've got from Nimbox. Say hi, Jason.
Morning, Johnny. Morning, everybody.
Morning. We've got Phil Burke from Biscuit.
Morning, guys and gals.
You're also Biscuit IT. You're also Yorkshire Telecoms. Is that correct?
Yorkshire Telecom, yes, yeah.
Brilliant. And Richard May from virtualDCS. You're
Hello, everyone.
One of our sponsors of the group.
Hey.
How are we all? We okay? Jason, how are you?
Good. A bit warm today, but yeah, generally keeping fit and well. Managing to get out and running a lot. So
excellent. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. You're a coordinator for Park Run, aren't you?
I am a volunteer for Park Run.
Volunteer.
Other things, yeah.
Excellent. Phil, how's lockdown been for you?
Well, the town's come along absolutely brilliantly, Johnny. Thank you very much for asking. The workload doesn't seem to have depleted very much. We're as busy as ever.
Are you?
Madly
wow.
so.
Right. And Richard, you're never out the house any. Oh no, that's not true. You're at work. You work from home a lot of the time. So is this been very much different for you?
The garden is looking fantastic, I've got to say. but other than that, no. Just the normal trial of trying to work out when work time is and when not, when play time is, really.
So as I said, this is a technology panel. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things from business data to ransomware, from and phishing, secure files sharing and insider threats, business continuity and disaster recovery, all sorts of different things. So if you do have questions, please do ask, and we'll put them to the panel. Nikki Towler's already said good morning. Good morning to you. As I said, we're live streaming on 3 different platforms today. If you're watching the replay, put #replay. That would be really good. Let's start with Phil, because Phil, you're an IT business that serves sort of SMEs. I'm guessing that there's been a whole range of issues for some of your clients. What's going on with your clients right now? Are they all remote working, or are some of them stepping back or going back into the office, or what's going on with your clients right now? What are their problems?
It's been a real mixed bag, hasn't it, really? I can't think of any business that hasn't been affected by what I refer to as the madness over the last 12 weeks. And reality is some clients are better placed to deal with it than others. We've got every kind of client you could think of in every walk of life, and some have adapted very, very well to it, and some have really struggled, to the point that some clients just simply don't have the knowledge to be able to work from home. So the guys have been really, really busy helping out. And then we've got other guys that have been working from home, and we've not even realized that they are now working from home.
And your typical clients, sort of 15 users upwards, sort of, even you've got some at 250 users. Is that?
Yeah, with some very large ones and with some very small ones. And again, every walk of industry that you could think of. A lot of the professional guys have their own in-house IT managers. We've helped with resourcing, getting people working from home. Classic things like people suddenly not being able to know how to access their own Wi-Fi at home. What's my password? Where do I find my password? Very, very basic things that you take for granted. But in the panic of needing to work from home, they've had to do it.
Yeah. Jason, a lot of the things that you've noticed, you've noticed a lot of hacking and ransomware going on. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's been a big increase in scams that are COVID-19 related going on, trying to take advantage of people's either fears, doubts, uncertainties in what's going on. And as you'd expect, trying to just catch them out in all sorts of different ways, whether it's via email, websites, or even by SMS. Seen all sorts of different messaging going on, trying to catch people out and rip them off.
Richard, your best. You really enjoy writing SaaS software as a service. Is this just giving you more time to be able to spend more time on something that you really enjoy doing?
No, not really. Well, I mean, we've been really busy as well. I think because everyone's sort of had to work from home. I think tools like Microsoft 365 have really come into their own, and consequently, we've been doing a lot of stuff, helping a lot of our partners, helping a lot of our customers in doing everything from installing them. Or we assisted with a 2,000 seat rollout of Teams, for example. So we've been doing quite a lot of stuff, and then also just encouraging people to think about the flip side of all this, which is the changes in security, the fact that just because it's in the cloud, it does actually still need to be backed up. So there's lots of stuff that I've been doing. So I think the bigger challenge is making sure I don't upset the wife by working till midnight all the time.
Richard, you talked about that a lot of businesses will have transition projects hanging around that they've been working on for years, and there's been some huge parts and huge thoughts being put into that, and then suddenly they've sort of had to transition remote work within 3 days. This was the conversation we've had in the past. Just tell us a bit more about your thoughts there, or what you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, basically what's happened is people have been sat around in dark rooms for years talking about their digital strategy, how they're going to move off of on-prem stuff, how they're going to move to things like using SharePoint Online, Teams, and there's been a lot of conversations about the security and the whys and wheres and should they, shouldn't they, and all the rest of it. And then what sort of happened is all that's gone out the window, and a lot of companies in like 2 or 3 days, if you just said, have scrapped the plan, if they even had one, implemented all these things, and then have gone ahead without necessarily thinking, or maybe they have thought, but just to pay attention to, are things being backed up, or as Jason could probably comment on, about things like the way you're protecting your data has it's definitely still your responsibility, whether a cloud person's got it or whether you've got it yourself. What do you think about that, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of different risks in working in different ways, from the insecurity of home networks to the multiple uses of devices, whether it be for doing work on home-based devices or doing your social media on your work device, to allowing other people to access it, and again back to where that data is held and how it's protected in transit as well. So my feeling is that a lot of people have moved to this new way of working in an unplanned and unstructured way, and whereas in the office you have a set of policies and procedures around how you work, you'll have analysed all of your systems as part of your GDPR compliance and identified any risks, etc. And the concern is, has everybody done that for the systems they're now using and the way they're now working? Have they updated it, and have they thought about the data protection side of things and what they need to do to bring both the policies and procedures up to speed, but also the staff awareness? People work in a certain mindset when they're in an office environment in a professional way, and they don't necessarily have that same mindset and awareness when they're mixing basically their social time with their business time.
Well, Jason, I've talked to you in the past about bandwidth, internet bandwidth. All of a sudden, we're all using video, Zoom, Teams, etc. There was talk of Netflix and YouTube limiting their bandwidth. Have you seen issues in this area that are concerning, or what stories have you heard?
Well, I personally had a few issues with bandwidth in the first few weeks of lockdown, but that hasn't been noticeable of late. And I know Netflix did cut the resolution of their streams down to reduce that as well. But I do know people living locally who do struggle massively to connect on any kind of video platform. Something like anything else, down to the contention ratio, down to the area you live in and your provider. But most generally seem to be coping, but there have been a few outages. I think Sky most noticeably went down. A few of the mobile networks struggle intermittently, but it's not been as bad as I expected, to be fair.
Phil, Yorkshire Telecoms, you must have some. Well, I mean, I guess telecoms industry has just changed vastly since you started. You started in '96, was it?
Thank you for reminding me. Yes.
You must have seen some huge changes. Was that dial-up?
Yeah, well, it was the Pony Express when we started. The comments that Jason just made, to me, these are the critical parts to what we're now living with, in that it's all about the connectivity. The services that we're all providing, in my experience, are superb. The tech is brilliant. It works. The hard bit is then educating the user to take advantage of that equipment, which is great. However, if you're like me and you live out in the sticks and your broadband on a good day is 10 meg, you're going to be struggling. I was on a Zoom meeting last week, halfway through it, talking to some clients in the middle of nowhere. They're in the northern part of Scotland, and my end dropped out. That's a bit embarrassing when you're an IT company or an MD of an IT company advising a customer what technology to use, and your own domestic broadband goes down. The reality is, working from home is a doddle if you've got all the tools of the trade being technology, broadband connection.
Richard, was it yourself talking about how companies are looking at putting in business broadband into employees' homes? Was it?
Yeah, I'd read about that. I mean, basically, I think what they're going down, it's more the security thing, of segregation and control. And of course, it's harder to do that when you're on a broadband connection that's pretty much unprotected, that's being used by everybody. And there's loads of them about. So yeah, it's something which I've read about. I don't know, Phil, if you've seen any more uptake in that sort of service.
Very much so, Richard. And this is one of the things that we've been looking into. We're trying to look at an opportunity to say to customers, not so much as a sales pitch, but as a sanity check, that if you're using a low-grade domestic broadband service at home, the minimum you should do is maybe look at upgrading that to a business grade. There are devices and tools available for you to have a backup to maybe like a 4G SIM, this kind of thing. So there are ways that you can do it. However, we've got the horse in front of the cart. The key to this lies in the hand of Openreach, who really need to get their skates on. And I think this is where the government need to start putting some pressure, that people working from home need connectivity, full stop. It ends there. Everybody had good connectivity, working from home would be a breeze.
I think some of it as well is actually the back-end providers as well. I think some people naively think that broadband is broadband, but
I think on that, Richard, I think a lot of people forget about the background to broadband when it was first introduced as a low-cost service for people who couldn't afford the cost of a full lease line, and they forget that with low cost comes low quality of service. There's no service level agreements there, and people just expect it to work fully at full speed. And maybe they don't understand the contention ratio, where you're sharing a domestic line with up to 50 people. If your contention ratio of your provider is 50-1, you can be sharing with 50 other people in the local area, hence the bandwidth getting squeezed at times of high usage.
And then go on.
Sorry, I was talking to a friend of mine. He lives up in North Leeds, and he's just been offered. It's a new service being rolled out by Openreach, fibre to his premises. So this is a domestic estate, a gigabit fibre for around about £60 a month. I could run NASA with that if I could get half of that where I live. So the sooner we get down that avenue, the better it will be for everybody.
Well, yeah, I was talking to an IT service provider who's based in Stockholm on a regular basis, and he services clients all over Yorkshire and the UK. But the connectivity over there mean, you're talking those sort of speeds and quarter of the cost. It's the infrastructure there is incredible.
We're years behind. Years behind.
Phil, you just mentioned NASA. Jason, you just mentioned Stockholm. Am I right? You did a philosophy of the theory of the cosmos back in your days. But not only did you study astronomy, you studied it in Danish. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
I had a fantastic opportunity with a scheme that's now just this year gone with Brexit, called Erasmus, to go and do an extra year of university at Copenhagen University, and it was quite possibly one of the best things I've ever done. But studying Supernovae Explosioner in Danish was quite a challenge.
So I assume you must have been watching much of the SpaceX and the ISS recently.
Yeah, we watched it on a Zoom actually with, ironically, with that guy in Stockholm amongst others on Saturday evening. We've all got an interest. We're all geeks at heart, so.
Phil, I'm just going back a step. You talked about business broadband and remote working. Are you seeing anything within your clients where they are looking at closing offices or reducing office space and turning to remote?
Scarily so. I would say the vast majority of clients I've spoken to over the last 12 weeks have slowly come around to the realization that this new norm actually is quite palatable. As Richard said, I mean, Richard's named every blade of grass in his back garden. They all have individual names by now, I'm sure. Mine's not dissimilar to that. I've spent more time in the garden than anywhere else. However, if you can get the connectivity, if you've got the Wi-Fi out there, why not? It'd be a different story if it'd been chucking it down with rain or blowing a gale. And I think our clients have come to that realization too, that if you can still achieve the same outcome where you actually reside, whether it be an office, home, on a beach, wherever, if you've got the connectivity, it's not so much of a problem. And my concern there is buildings are going to be becoming less important to clients. Suppliers as well. Where's you're just going to be on the roads, and all you're going to see is delivery truck after delivery truck after delivery truck, because you don't go to the office anymore. Your DHL's turning up at home with whatever it is that you bought this week. That to me, that's that is the future of what we're talking about here. You can get everything at home.
I think one thing that I would say to that though is that I think the lack of social interaction you can't be, and I think one thing we've particularly noticed with our support engineers is that maybe they're not quite as efficient as they were before, because historically they'd all been sat together in a room, one person overhears someone else talking. We're all techies, so we all like playing with each other's train sets. So suddenly before you know it, people are helping each other solve problems. So we're seeing a lot more of people maybe isolated, flogging away at an issue, where if they'd been in a room with other people, they'd have been more likely to shout out. And the other thing as well is that I think Jason's probably in his kitchen from what I can see from here, but it's where you work. I mean, I'm fortunate that I've got a home office, whereas we have company Zoom meetings, and I can see one lady's obviously working in a utility room because her laptop's on top of the washing machine. So whilst for some people I think it's easy to say work from home, other people where they haven't got the space or maybe they benefit from the interaction, it's a different story.
I agree.
Yeah. On that, I had to buy a desk for the other room to try and segregate my working and social time, because yes, I'm in the kitchen at the moment, but normally I work in what is my son's bedroom. But because I was spending so much time sat on the chairs, I had to go and get my office chair from the office, causing me back problems. So just because it's carpeted in there, it doesn't work very well with the office chair, so I'm back in the kitchen.
I'd like to get into a bit more nitty gritty around cloud, and what I've noticed is that this crisis has sped up the move to the cloud? So I think a lot of us, especially people like yourself, Richard, have been talking about the cloud for a long time, been involved in it for a long time, and been trying to educate businesses into moving. I think what I'm noticing personally is that I think this has sped this process up. What is that the answer then? Do we just all, Richard, is that the answer? Do we all just need to move our data to the cloud and that solves our problem?
I think it's a solution. I mean, the biggest areas that we're seeing growth in at the moment is 365 backup, which is one of our products where enabling people to get their data off the cloud and back it up somewhere else so it's secure and protected. Because I think one thing that people forget about in cloud is the fact that it works on what they call a joint responsibility model. So, for example, Microsoft are responsible for providing you a service, but they take no responsibility at all for your data. So they could lose the whole lot and just say, "Yeah, have a nice day. You should have had it backed up. You should have had it protected." So that's one thing about the cloud that people need to pay attention to. It's not utopia. The other area we're seeing a lot of is desktop as a service. So obviously, people have gone home with their laptops and maybe trying to function in the same way as they were before, but things like desktop as a service would actually enable companies to implement more security, because rather than actually running things locally on the desktops within people's houses, they could actually be still running them in the secure environment of a data center, restricting what people can do quite tightly, which protects against things like viruses, malware as well, but also data leakage, information protection. So the two areas, they're my two biggest growth areas, and I think if you start putting those things together with some other products that other people on here might be actually pushing, then you can create quite a good cloud solution. And I also think it gives you the versatility then to be wherever. So you can be in the office, you can be working at home, and that flexibility. Now everyone's been bought laptops and things like that. I think is something that's definitely going to be a thing for the future.
Although, just talking about the laptops, I think your insurance company or one of them, they were looking to move remotely, but one of the biggest problems was they couldn't get the hardware. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
And the increase in price as well.
You talked about sorry, Richard, from your point of view, you've got two main offerings, which is reselling what you do, but also direct to some of the larger businesses out there. If we're talking about some of the larger businesses that you are working with, are we anywhere near to the flipping point of converting to the cloud? Do you think in the sort of corporations that you're working with?
I think so. Yeah, I think a lot of them, where possible, have started to work from home. I can see call centers going to be more home based, or is that not the question?
No, sorry, I should have. Sorry, so forgetting the crisis, I'm just talking in general. Large corporations. Do you think we've seen the tipping point of them converting to the cloud? This may have sped things up, but some of the clients that I work with, I think they're still far from it, and I'm just wondering from your point of view if you think we're even at the tipping point on some of the large corporations yet.
I think sometimes the large corporations got more options. It's more the smaller companies, small to mediums, that actually probably benefit from the cloud more in some ways, because the large companies have got the economies of scale to be able to afford all the kit, etc. Where a 15-person company or even a 50-person company may not just have the money to be able to implement their own telephone system or their own SharePoint solution or their own Teams solution. So whilst I think the corporate arena will move to the cloud, I still think that the SMEs can benefit faster.
And Phil, going on the SME side, have we reached the tipping point of companies converting to the cloud?
I think it certainly put the target in front of many companies. Again, companies we've been speaking to, they've just seen this madness, as I keep referring to it, as the opportunity to flex the option of being able to work from home. And as Richard said, it's a hybrid. To me, it's an option. You can work in the office some days, you can work out the office other days, etc., etc. But I think that the critical bit here is having the option. And if your data's not secure, if you don't have the right tools to do the job with, 365 backup is a classic example, as Richard mentioned. We've got clients, we're saying to them, well, you need 365 backup. And they're saying, well, no, it comes out of the box. We get backup. No, you don't. The application is backed up, but your data isn't, and your data isn't secure. That bit of education is the thing that I think a lot of people need as they move slowly or quickly, whichever it may be, into working from home. Things that play in the office don't necessarily play at home, and vice versa.
Am I right, Richard? You developed a product where you can, instead of having to do a mass restore, you can restore individual inboxes or individual users. Is that correct?
Yeah. Basically, we've utilised the Veeam engine to do 365 backups, but then we've written a complete front-end portal where anyone from a web browser, be it an IT department or if they so wish, the end user themselves, can go in and help themselves to any of their files that they've lost. Whenever they lost them, they can stick them back where they came from, back onto the cloud, download them, email them to somewhere else. But yeah, either files or complete mailboxes, all completely managed via a web browser.
And there's and in fact, having a look at it, you've got a portal for resellers to be able to do exactly the same thing and manage all of that. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So resellers can utilize our product and literally have a list of all their customers and manage all their backups for them, be alerted to failures, warnings, and basically do all that with their own branding, and they can be on within minutes if they want to offer that service.
Jason, you're a lot of the work you do is around the actual data itself and some of the files. I guess the issue there is around encryption and authentication. Is that correct?
Encryption, absolutely. Especially working remotely. We advise everybody to have all the hard drives encrypted. If you've got Windows 10 Pro, it comes with BitLocker, and there are third-party applications out there. Our product, it does encrypt the data in stationary and in transit. Just allows people to share information either with customers or between teams, as if it was on a virtual file server in the office, but it's synced to the cloud.
And how do and so what are the issues around that then? So if I've got data that's sort of on a central computer, is my concern, if it's not in the office, is that anyone could get to it?
Well, no, it's with the level of encryption that we've got. And we have people regularly test and try to hack the system. Hackers worldwide attempt to break into it, and we manage that effectively so that it just doesn't happen.
Okay, it sounds good. So I guess the storage, the amount of storage that companies like yourselves need has just vastly increased. In fact, was it 250 gig hard drives that you were first installing, Richard, when you first started?
Yeah, 250 gig, and I think we're doing 14 terabyte drives at the moment. 200, yeah.
14 terabyte.
Yeah, 14 terabyte drives, and at the moment we're probably buying about half a petabyte every couple of weeks to a month. So it's definitely accelerating.
Wow. And Phil, what have you even in the SMEs, you must have seen some big changes.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think people totally underestimate the amount of data that they use on a day-by-day basis. The old adage, I don't particularly like the wording of it, but you don't know what you don't know. And when you talk to a customer these days about where do you store your files and how big are your files, the first question is no idea. No idea what it is. So the scoping of it, and then when you actually relate to a customer, you're storing this much terabyte or petabyte, whatever it might be, it blows the mind.
What Jason, from a GDPR point of view and a compliance point of view, what are the things that we need to consider? We've probably rushed these plans and moved data quickly. What are the things that we should be considering, and the things that we should make sure that are in place?
Well, with GDPR, one of the requirements was to make an assessment of all of your data, the data type and where it was stored, and of the systems that you were using. If you're using a software as a service, maybe a hosted CRM, maybe an online accounts package, maybe online files storage and sharing, and review those risks. And if people are using systems that they haven't previously used, a classic example, so many people are using Zoom now. There was a very public announcement by the government that they were doing a cabinet meeting over Zoom, and 2 days later there was a load of Zoom videos found in an unsecured Amazon S3 bucket. So I wouldn't have been advertising the fact that I was having those meetings on there had that been risk assessed. But as a business, you need to assess all of your systems and processes as well. Are you emailing sensitive information around when you should be sharing it more securely? Is the system you're using giving you what we call zero knowledge protection? Are they reading and scanning and sharing your stuff with third parties? Those reviews should take place as a matter of course, and my concern is that a lot of people may have missed those reviews in terms of how they work and where the data is residing and how it's moving in transit.
I've got a question here that's coming on LinkedIn with regard, I think it's to Richard, with regard to how far can the data go back to restore. So, for example, a lawyer might need longer retention, for example. How far can you go back on data?
As long as you like. We have unlimited retention, and at the moment we're just about to implement immutability as well, which means that not only can we store the data, but we can guarantee it's never been changed as well.
So I wanted to hear more about this topic. Tell us about data immutability.
It's really just it's basically like here's what you said earlier, but yeah, freezing your data. So obviously things like ransomware attack data, and they attack it by rewriting it and encoding it. If immutability basically means that once it's written, it can't be changed, which is particularly useful against ransomware, but also useful in legal terms where you can prove that a document is original, and in things like a medical, where you might want to make sure that those medical records have never been tampered with. That's what you can achieve with immutability.
And is this
data manipulation is a big risk, isn't it? So it's a big threat as much as data theft and data loss. Data manipulation is a big risk.
Something that businesses are aware of, or is it something that you need to educate them on? Are they coming to you asking for this, or is this something new?
It is something fairly new, but bear in mind, not everybody needs it. But there's other ways of protecting data. But in terms from the point of view of law and things like that, where you actually want to guarantee your files aren't changed, or ransomware protection, it's obviously quite useful.
Okay. Phil, you've only recently started working more with Veeam. What was your reason for moving to that product?
Yeah, we've been aware of it for quite some time now. Always found it to be a fantastic product along the way. We looked at when we set Biscuit up 4 years ago, we kind of set off, I suppose, into uncharted waters, not really knowing which way we were going to go and what product sets fitted best for us. What we found over time is that certain products that we set out with don't necessarily fit the bill these days. So a bit Darwinian, I suppose, we've adapted and adopted as time's gone by. And some of the major benefits around Veeam are obviously, as Richard and Jason have been saying already, it's more cloud focused. It's something that's easy to deploy, it's easy to use. Customers in general have heard of it. You're ticking a lot of boxes as a product to sell to end users.
Jason or Richard, what would you add on there about Veeam? For you, it's a major part of your business, both of your businesses, I think.
I mean, to us, we picked Veeam because they've been around now since 2008. We've been working with them since 2008, and I think they're clearly ahead of the game. They're leading in the field, and the other thing I think that Veeam's done, which is really interesting, is just what they've done to the prices in the market. I mean, I've been offering disaster recovery now for 10, 12 years, and you've seen the price of providing, say, real-time DR protection to a server going from thousands to hundreds of pounds, and a lot of that's been enabled by companies like Veeam with the technology and their price points that they're pushing it out.
Jason, one could argue that SharePoint, I'll try not to swear, but Dropbox, and some of the other unreliable systems. Now, one could argue that there's some other systems out there. What are the pitfalls? And what I'm more interested in is, are there any particular sectors that you've seen growth in wanting your product, maybe over the pandemic, for where potentially certain sectors need to be really considering using alternatives?
In terms of the others, I mean, I've mentioned earlier, other systems, depending on where they're based, their terms of service say that they will scan and read your stuff and share it with third parties. That's a legal requirement due to where they're based, and we don't work in that way. In terms of sectors, I work with a number of IT providers who are increasingly using the system with their clients. But conversely, we're also working with a number of customers, who are maybe furloughing staff and taking the system off. So we've been working with them to reduce the workload that they need, so that when they come back, help them plan for when they come back to be able to function effectively and quickly without having to modify the system too much. Big change in architects in particular, and some of the legal clients. But there has been significant levels of interest in it in certain sectors like property, for example. We have some advocates who endorse the product openly and give us the opportunity to share that with their networks, which is great.
Great. Richard, you store our data in effect, and Phil, as a reseller, is using your storage. Why should we trust you?
Why indeed?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, we've been around for quite a long time, as I said to start with, and we've spent a lot of time and effort making sure we've got the right processes and procedures in place to make sure that the data's safe. We try and follow best practice all the time. We're ISO 27001 compliant, and we don't just wear that as a badge for the sake of it. We do follow our processes and procedures quite strictly. So all data is held in secure data centers. All the data is actually held in Derby and Wakefield. So we're very much local, using our own equipment in our own data not in our own data centers, but our own equipment in our own racks. That we're basically managing that from beginning to end. So we're not reliant on a third party like Amazon or Microsoft or somebody like that to provide a level of security. We are where the buck stops. And if we have a breach, we're the ones that will be sued.
A good answer. Phil, what typically are the biggest areas that you need to help your clients with? Is it hardware? Is it software? Is it what are the key areas where you're having to the problems and the pains that your clients have?
Education, I think, is the starting point. As we said at the beginning, the technology is great. You can move your services to the cloud. You can have good connectivity. You can have all these things. Unfortunately, if clients don't know how to access the files, the information, the service, whatever it is that you've provided them with, it's just been a wasted endeavor. The thing I like about the stuff that the guys at virtualDCS and Nimbox do is they provide I'm going to call it an under one umbrella solution. whereby you can go to a client, or I can go to one of my clients and say, right, okay, what is it you're trying to achieve? They'll say, I don't know, we all want to work from home or whatever it might be. And I can effectively pick and choose products and services from one supplier, knowing full well that I've got a really good relationship with them, but equally importantly, they are specialists in their field. Now that gives me good confidence to be able to go to my clients and say, here's a solution that I'm going to put my seal of approval on. All we now need to do, Mr. Customer, is show you how to use it. And which is the thing I said right at the beginning, you've got to educate your clients in how to access these new world, if I can call it that, products and services.
So, and Jason, talking about, if I've got a file that I want to share with someone, whether that be a client or a member of staff, and what's the, what is the most secure way of me sharing that file? There's so many different options.
There are, and it depends on the nature of the file, the level of security you want to go to. Obviously, we offer the highest level of security for file sharing. Then I don't believe any major issues in the security of OneDrive and Office 365, although it is very heavily targeted by hackers and scammers. Obviously, I'm going to say the most secure is our solution.
Yeah, but sorry, away from the product. Actually, I was meaning instead of. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's what you're advocating is at least as a minimum, it's sending a link to the file than sharing it on email, for example.
Yeah, I mean, email is notoriously insecure, can be intercepted. You can encrypt email as well, but that involves other sort of third-party solutions. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't advocate emailing anything sensitive.
But I'm guessing in reality, that's what's happening all day, every day.
Yeah.
So how do we get? As an IT manager, as an organization, how do we? Is this about policies and procedure? Does it go back to Phil and education? Is that what this is all about then?
Yeah, Phil's absolutely spot on about educating people about whether it's about process or about risk, and getting people to understand what those risks are. Rather than if you talk about a product and service, people aren't going to listen to you. But if you can have a full and frank conversation about the processes, the risks, engaging with staff and getting them to understand why they have those processes and procedures in place, then you're going to have much better engagement throughout the organization.
I think ease has helped as well. I think technology has come on, and I remember a few years ago we went out to help one of our customers, and they were an IFA organisation, and as we went round, we opened in their laptops, we could see their passwords stuck on post-it notes in 3/4 of the laptops that were being opened. But I think now the technology has come on so much that people are now far more used to things like 2FA, challenge responses. Having to use their mobile phones to log into things. So I think now, as things have progressed, there's a lot less excuse for not applying some security to what you're doing. Whereas historically, security was difficult. It's becoming easier and easier to be secure all the time. I think the bigger problem is more around the links in some ways. I mean, Jason's talking about emailing links, but what do we feel to the constant bombardment of links? That are they spam? Is it ransomware? Is that link safe? Isn't that link safe? I know our finance department have just been moaned at from Microsoft for not paying an invoice for the last 3 months. But you should have seen the email and the link that was in it. She just went, "Oh, I'm not going to click on that."
What's the next big thing that virtualDCS is working on? Is it the thing that the data immutability that we've covered, or is there anything else in the pipeline?
The next big thing we're we're releasing is object storage. So we'll be able to offer our Amazon S3 style service to our customers, which is quite useful if they want to use other backup products, for example, to back up into us. It's very useful for our Office 365 solution. It works very well with Veeam if people want to offsite archive data, and if they want to know where that data is, well, it'll be in Derby or Wakefield. So it's definitely a better thing in my mind than just shipping it off into some random cloud where they're not necessarily even guaranteeing where it's going to be from one day to the next. So the storage as a service is our next thing, and that is due middle of July.
Great. And I've just got a question in here. I'm not sure. Well, hopefully one of you can help me understand the question. And secondly, hopefully one of you can decide who's best to answer it. But how could a business prevent cloud sprawl?
Well, if I mentioned earlier about analyzing, the GDPR process of analyzing.
Can we understand? Sorry to interrupt you. Can we understand what it is first?
Cloud sprawl is basically you give somebody Microsoft, and suddenly they've got access to all these products, and then before you know it, they've set up some team sites, and then before you know it, you've got some more team sites. We had one guy that came on, and he started doing backups, and said, you've got 279 SharePoint sites. There's only 40 people, and he went, no, absolutely no idea. So there are tools out there to protect, to control that. So you can control it with things like policies. When you're creating things like team sites, administrators can think, rather than just allowing anybody to willy-nilly create a team site, to put processes and procedures in place to basically prevent people from doing some of these things. So I mean, obviously Microsoft wants you to use everything in their little tool bag, but I think you've got to pay some attention to the settings. And this was a lot what we were talking about earlier when we were saying about people have spent years working out what their digital strategy would be. Well, that was all to do with, a lot of it, how they're going to protect data, what they're going to let people do, what they're going to let people see, where they're going to let them see them. Can they create their own team site? Can they do this? Can they do that? And in reality, what's sort of gone in at the moment for lots of people is a nice vanilla box where everyone can do everything. I know I was talking to a council the other day who were doing backup, and they've basically spread the rumour that this is a temporary solution, and at the end of the day, everything's going to be deleted, and they're going to start again when COVID's over. So that's their way of preventing sprawl.
Wow. Jason, sorry, we interrupted you. Were you going to add something there?
No, I was just going to say the GDPR process should identify that sprawl, because you're looking at what your data is and where it's held, and identifying all the different areas. So that's, that process should help limit the sprawl.
Phil, telecoms, you've seen a lot. 5G is on its way. China playing a big part. Do you have any takes on this, or any thoughts on 5G and China's involvement?
I was just going to answer your question about the sprawl at first. The only sprawl
go for it, Phil.
Over the last 12 weeks has been my waistline, but that's something completely irrelevant. The 5G debate will just lumber on, because we all understand that having better connectivity for your mobile, your home, your premises, wherever you work, we all know that's a good thing. Security, obviously, of the network is paramount. And I think we live in a society these days where there's always somebody poking a finger at somebody else and saying, well, if it's coming from China, it's this. If it's coming from America, it's that. If it's coming from... And you can understand the concerns that people have, because, as Jason's just quite rightly said, cyber it's a multi-billion, if not trillion-pound business across the globe. There is always somebody somewhere trying to either take the money out of your back pocket, out your bank account, or steal your data. It's just there all the time. Anything that can be done to minimize those threats, and if it is that there's a government that's just put it in these terms, Huawei being, they say, government sponsored, although they'll argue they're not. You can understand that that's a risk to somebody. And then you fall into the trap of saying, well, is there an alternative? If there is an alternative, I'm quite risk averse. I would prefer if Huawei were not involved with it, if there is a potential risk. But again, it then boils down to, who do you believe in the media? The media will say one thing, Huawei's involvement is less than 1% in the network. You know, it's a tough call. We're missing the focus of what 5G is about. 5G will offer so much flexibility to how we operate, how we live our lives, the things we do going forward. To me, the focus needs to be refocused, if I can use that phrase, onto what are the benefits of it, not what are the disadvantages of having Huawei involved in it.
What we're coming very close to the end of this, which has just been fascinating. I just wanted to totally change the subject for just a second here, because Richard, not only do I know that you're a huge Slow Readers fan, and you must be seriously missing going to gigs right now. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, been constantly on chatting to all my Slow Readers friends online, and yeah, it's definitely missing it.
But not only that, I didn't realise that you were a head swimming coach as well. So
oh, you've been looking at my profile.
So you must, I guess, you know, when's swimming going to start again?
When the council's open the pool, it'll probably be the earliest we can do it. We don't do any lakes or rivers, so that'll be when the pool's open. And I don't really know. Jason's probably more put his finger on the sporting pulse than me on this.
A good friend of mine, I actually support him as a stroke survivor. He's also a swimming instructor for Leeds City Council. And he was in yesterday, and they were going through the plans for how they're going to actually operate. And he's expecting that to sort of come online sort of mid-July, I think. Depends on the area. I'm in Kirklees at the moment, and Kirklees Active Leisure have furloughed 95% of the staff. So even though we've got updated guidelines on when we can go back on the track, they haven't got the staff available to actually facilitate that. So we've got athletes going, great, we can run, but no facility and no way of actually using the facility as yet. So it's going to be gradual. And there's so many questions over how it's going to operate as well, with social distancing, that we just don't know what's going to happen. Certainly not when it comes to competition.
What about when it comes to park runs?
It's a very good question. Parkrun Worldwide are reviewing this constantly. They're ultimately under the guidance of local areas. So England Athletics, Inshore, Parkrun in the UK, and they're taking guidance from all the countries individually. And it's going to have to be very carefully managed, because there's 6-7 million registered park runners in the world, and everyone's missing it. And if they open in an unstructured way, it'll create a big risk. But they're very mindful of it. And I know Tom, the COO, is being very, very cautious.
It is. It's a crazy world. This has been fascinating. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you very much for all taking time to discuss. What would be really good to know is where we can find you online. So if we wanted to discuss directly with you, if we wanted to discuss file sharing with Jason, or cloud and hosting and data with Richard, or you describe yourself, Phil. It's MSP, managed service provider. Is that what you?
Yeah, so we, within the two businesses, so Biscuit's the IT arm of the business, and Yorkshire Telecom is the telephony arm, from 1995. Effectively, anything, I use the phrase when I talk to potential customers, if you hit it with a keyboard, we get involved. If you speak into it, we get involved. So mobiles, the whole kit and caboodle, anything that's going to make your transition from working in an office to home easier, we get involved with it.
Where do we find you online, Phil?
Typically, you would best place for me always is my email address, which is a really simple one of Phil with a double L at biscuit.uk.com. Really, really
brilliant.
Simple.
Thank you, Jason. If we're looking for you, where do we find you?
Predominantly on LinkedIn or through the Nimbox website. That comes straight to myself. We're pretty active in the support group as well. If people want to email me, it's jason.newell@nimbox.co.uk.
And I was about to say the website is nimbox.co.uk, isn't it? That's right.
Absolutely.
And Richard, if we're wanting to talk to you, where will we find you?
Yeah, you can get us through our website, which is www.virtualDCS.co.uk. If you want more information on 365 Backup, you can get that on office365backup.co.uk, or you can always ask Phil if he can help you too. Finally, you can get me on my email address, which is richard.may@virtualdcs.co.uk.
Fabulous. Thank you once again. If you have other topics that you'd like us to do live Q&As with, please do let us know. Drop in the comments. If you're not aware of the Facebook group, please head over to Facebook, have a look at the Coronavirus Yorkshire Business Support Group. And if this was enjoyable or it helped or anything at all, please do like, comment, or share. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you all again soon. If you want to say goodbye, see you all soon. Take care.
Look after yourself.